Up. Do you want to play? Up. Right. Hello. Welcome to Shmirchik Culture's Corner, where you will experience all the unpleasantness that comes with me. Hello. Anyway, so we're up to doing the stories of the dybbuk, part 4. What is a dybbuk? It's when a demon or a spirit attaches themselves to a person's body and they go in the body, or they possess a person's body, or there could be like two souls at once possessing the body. It's usually a soul that is somewhere that wasn't able to enter hell because they've done something really bad, and so they get tortured by angels that enjoy tormenting them. And to escape this torment, they usually enter into a person's body or something like that, right? So we're going to go to the story, the dybbuk. We're up to Shamsai, right? It's called Shamsai. This is adapted from, it's saying the source, from Ruchos Misapros, Jerusalem, from 1954. Chapter 6, originally part of a larger work entitled Minchas Yehuda in Baghdad, 1933. So it's just saying where this story is from. And so the book of Ruchos Misapros records numerous cases of possession and exorcism involving the assistance of Rabbi Pitai in the capacity of exorcist. The following is one of those cases. Shamsai, Part 1. This took place in Baghdad in 1894. So I don't know if you can see the picture, right? Okay. Okay, Shamsai. Shamsai glared at his mule and pondered. Perhaps he should just kill it. After all, it had been misbehaving ever since he had purchased it from the Arab mule dealers. "You're getting a good buy," they had assured him. And when he had complained about the mule's unruly behavior, several days later, they had just smiled at him and said, "It takes time. You'll get used to each other." And then they laughed. As he stood thinking of ways to murder his mule, Joseph the merchant approached him. Joseph was Shamsai's favorite client, always with enough work to keep Shamsai healthy and wealthy for weeks, sometimes months. Delivering wares to outlying villages was not an easy task, but Joseph always made it worth his while with his generous payments. "Why do you stare at the animal like that, Shamsai?" "I'm going to kill it." "You can't destroy a mule just by staring at it, you know." "This is all nice and funny to you, Joseph, but to me this is a dead serious business. I need this beast to earn a living, to deliver merchandise for people like you. But since I purchased the blasted animal from those Arabians over a month ago, it has only given me trouble. It refuses to obey me. It refuses to recognize its master." Joseph cleared his throat and placed a hand on Shamsai's shoulder. "The animal is trying to teach you a lesson." "What are you talking about?" "The mule does not recognize you as its master, just as you do not recognize God as your master." Shamsai turned angrily to Joseph, staring at him with the same glare with which he had addressed the mule. "Joseph, stop preaching to me." "As a fellow Jew," Joseph says, "I must try. You live your life just like a mule. Only the mule fulfills its purpose. You don't." Right, so I don't like when, there's a lot of people that think it's their place to give musar, right? To give, to rebuke their friend or family member or whoever, to try to get them into the right path, which is, I think, it's arrogant in a way. Do you know what I mean? I have my own opinions on it, so whatever. "Say no more, Joseph. It is enough my mule has turned against me. Must my friend and client turn against me too? If I were against you, Shamsai, I would not care about you. I am for you, my friend, and it concerns me that you are approaching 40, still unmarried, and never in the synagogue or the house of Torah study. You are wasting away your years, and when you leave this world for the next, you will have nothing to take with you but a few saddle pouches. I'll also have with me the hide of that scoundrel mule, says Shamsai. I am serious, Shamsai. Think about what I tell you. Listen, Joseph, don't preach to me. I'll bet you are jealous of me because you are married and I am free to do as I please. I am very content being unmarried at 38, and I look forward to 38 more years of being unhitched. Come now, Shamsai. Every man needs a wife. Every man needs a woman, yes, but not necessarily a wife, says Shamsai, right? A man who is not married is but a half man, as the Talmud teaches us. As the Talmud teaches you, perhaps, but not me. I write my own Talmud, Joseph. I follow my own rules in the game of life. And that, Shamsai, is a sure way to lose in the end. So they're having this argument, right? Bah! Stop it already. Just give me your wares and stop trying to change my life. Joseph retreated a few steps to his wagon and unloaded his merchandise. Take this to Akuba, he said, handing the bags to Shamsai. Akuba? Shamsai exclaimed, puzzled. You've never sent anything to Akuba. Are you nervous, Shamsai? I thought you hadn't a worry in the world. The way to Akuba is dangerous, Joseph. You know that. The entire way is fraught with danger. It's not so much that I fear for myself, but, you should fear, Joseph, for your merchandise. My friend, I would never send you on this trip without escort. There is a caravan leaving Baghdad in about an hour, and... Oh, come now, Joseph. You know what I think of caravans. I would rather travel by myself. I can't stand being with so many people for so long a journey. I'll go alone. I would prefer you to go with the caravan. After all, you yourself said that my wares would be in danger on the way to Akuba. Secondly, my wife wishes very much to journey to the grave of Ezekiel the prophet. Is she mad? What for? So they're having this conversation back and forth, in case you're not following. The physicians have informed us that she can no longer bear children, and regardless of what I tried to say to her, she will not be consoled. She wishes to have more children, and so she has decided to venture to Ezekiel's grave and to pray her heart out to the Almighty. So Shamsai says, can't she just remain in Baghdad and pray in the synagogue? Come now, Shamsai, says Joseph, have a little sympathy. What has your wife's visit to the gravesite of Ezekiel got to do with me? I wouldn't allow her to go with the caravan unless I knew there was another Jew besides her. I cannot trust those barbarians with my wife. Come on, Joseph, they're all Muslims. They are forbidden to make any advances to your wife. And Joseph says, there are devout Muslims, all right, but not when it comes to Jews. Haven't you ever studied the Quran? Me? I haven't as much interest in the Quran as I do in the Torah. I believe in no religion, but the religion of Shamsai. He sounds like a typical arrogant prick who is like anti-religious of today, you know, like. Continuing on. Okay, Joseph looked at Shamsai nervously and then turned to watch a small coach approach with his wife. The woman remained seated in the wagon, clutching a small traveling bag. Shamsai had never before met Joseph's wife and remained staring at her for several moments, for her beauty was overbearing. Without further ado, he tied his mule to the back of the wagon and prepared to board. Take good care of Leah, Shamsai. Don't let those villains so much as talk to her. Here, I'm depending upon you. You will be paid well upon your return. Shamsai seated himself beside Leah. Right, so basically, in the Quran, right, they're allowed to desecrate anybody else's woman if she is not one of them, right? So, if you're not a Muslim, they can do whatever they want with her, because that's their religion, right? So Joseph looked at Shamsai nervously and then turned to watch a small coach. Right, we saw that. Take good care of Leah, Shamsai. Don't let those villains so much as talk to her. Here, I'm depending upon you. You will be paid well upon your return. Shamsai seated himself beside Leah and took control of the reins. As Joseph waved to his wife, Shamsai drove toward the caravan depot at the other end of the city. They arrived just as the caravan was pulling out and positioned themselves along the rear guard. As the two rode silently behind the others, Shamsai's mind began to wander. If only she were unmarried, he kept thinking to himself, if only she were unmarried. Casting quick glances at her from the corner of his eyes, he became infatuated by her beauty. Too bad, he thought, too bad she's religious. So righteous. We could have an enjoyable trip, she and I. He's such a creep. Shamsai took a deep breath and shook his head as if to shake away thoughts of Leah. But as the hours passed, he found himself thinking about her more and more. Each time he tried to remove her from his thoughts, she would return shortly thereafter, more intensely than before. Akuba, he thought to himself, was still a long way off, at least another 3 hours. 3 more hours of intense fantasy about the woman, seated only inches from him, was going to be more than he could possibly take. Listen, the scenery is really beautiful around these parts, he said, breaking the silence. Don't you think so? Leia did not reply, but continued looking straight ahead. Shamsai cleared his throat and tried to whistle a tune. He realized she was so virtuous that she would not even converse with another man. How then would he possibly be able to actualize his fantasies? What a creep. Shamsai did not have to think hard to devise a scheme, for circumstances were in his favor. As the afternoon sun began to bear down on the caravan as it passed through an open valley, Leia's eyes squinted from brightness and soon shut together. Tired from traveling, she soon fell asleep. Shamsai, noticing that Leia's head was drooping, decreased the pace of the horses. Slowly the coach fell behind the rest of the caravan. Shamsai looked at his passenger periodically to make sure she was still asleep, as he slowed the horses even more. As the caravan disappeared into the horizon, Shamsai felt like leaping up and down in the wagon in celebration of his victory. His plan had worked. Pulling at the left rein, Shamsai directed the horses off the trail on which the caravan had traveled and led them gently into the forest. Noticing Leia squirming uncomfortably in her seat, he feigned sleep himself, allowing the reins to rest loosely in his limp hands. Leia sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Oh my God, where are we?" she exclaimed. "Shamsai, where are we?" Shamsai responded by snoring. As far as he was concerned, he too had dozed off, and the wagon being the last one in the caravan had veered off the road. Shamsai moved uneasily in his seat as Leia shouted at him frantically. Grunting and moaning, he acted as if he was just waking up from a heavy nap. "Huh? What is it, woman? What do you want?" "Shamsai, we're lost. Where's the caravan?" Shamsai sat up, pretending to be startled, and looked around the forest. He pulled the horses to a full stop and jumped off the wagon, as if to investigate their whereabouts. "Oh no," he moaned. "We're lost. I'm terribly sorry, Leia. I was extremely exhausted from the long journey. If only you would have carried on a conversation with me during the trip, this wouldn't have happened. I would have stayed awake." "What should we do? Are you at all familiar with the area? "Not this particular area. I have a feeling we could catch up with the caravan if we headed eastward. We'll use the sun as our guide." Shamsai climbed back on the wagon and felt good inside. Now, it was just he and the most beautiful woman he had ever set his eyes on. The thought stabbed him in his heart, for were he to try anything, he would never again be able to face his most prosperous customer. On the other hand, he thought, Leia was a virtuous woman. She would be too ashamed to inform her husband if anything did happen. But what did he care? It would take little effort on his part to simply disappear to another land. He had no family to care for, no important belongings to go back for. Everything, he felt, was worth sacrificing for the intense momentary pleasure he would experience with his passenger. He's such a creep. Ew. The two rode on for another hour, Leia staring into the disappearing horizon, as if hoping to find the tail end of the caravan, and Shamsai acting worried, knowing all along that he was heading towards the long-awaited realization of his fantasies. The sun began to drop behind the Iraqi hills, bringing in its descent the darkness of the night. Oh my God. What a creep. Can you imagine? What a creep. "I'm afraid we will have to set up camp for the night," Shamsai said solemnly. "We can't travel on. We need our rest. The horses need their sleep. And we can better determine our direction when there is sunlight." "But are you sure we have been going in the right direction?" she said. "I'm positive. We're going towards Akuba, but by a different route. Don't worry, Leia. I've traveled the length and breadth of Iraq for many years now." The two stepped off the wagon and began unloading blankets. Shamsai helped her unload the food pouches, and then, unable to control himself any longer, he pulled her to the ground. As soon as she could struggle free, Leia scrambled to her feet and ran for the wagon. "Foolish woman!" Shamsai shouted. "Where will you run to?" But Leia paid him no mind and boarded the small coach, whipping the horses ferociously into a gallop. Shamsai jumped to his feet and ran after the disappearing wagon, shouting in a frenzy, "Wait, you fool! You will get lost! You'll be killed! Wait! At least let me have my mule back! Let my mule free! Cut him loose!" As he ran after the wagon, he withdrew his hunting knife and tried to reach his mule, who ran along behind the wagon. As he flung himself at the beast, the mule jumped and kicked, hurling its master into the air. Shamsai landed on the ground, rolled over several times from the impact, and watched the wagon, with his mule, disappear into the darkness. "Silly woman," he muttered. "She's heading in the opposite direction. She'll end up back in Baghdad if she's not attacked on the way." Shamsai rose and brushed the leaves and soil from his clothes. A chilling sensation went up and down his spine as he realized that he had lost his knife, and that Leia had taken off with her husband's wares. Shamsai had no choice now but to go on toward Akuba, and never again to return to Baghdad. She would surely tell her husband what had happened. Then again, maybe she would not make it back home safely, right? Shamsai would take no chances. He decided to continue on toward Akuba, taking along some of the food which had been left behind. He began his lone journey on foot, trembling with the fear of being ambushed by man or beast. Soon he reached a road to Akuba, which almost seemed lit up by the light of the full moon, unhindered by the forests which flanked the pathway. By morning, Shamsai had reached the outskirts of Akuba. He walked across a very wide field of freshly cut wheat, hoping he would make it to the village without being attacked, for the outlying regions of Akuba were known for harboring undesirables. Like himself, right? Literally. "Good morning," a voice shouted from a near distance. Shamsai froze in his tracks and turned toward the voice. It was a young man lying half naked in the grass several yards away. The man had a large curved knife tied to his belt, and Shamsai didn't know how to interpret the man's good morning. "I watched you coming off the road," the man said, rising slowly, his right hand on the handle of the knife, "and I said to myself, very unusual. Usually caravans pass along the main road, or individuals riding donkeys laden with merchandise. But here comes a man, all alone, without a pack on his back, looking very weary as well. Perhaps you have been attacked and robbed in the woods." Yes, I was attacked, and all my wares were stolen," Shamsai replied quickly. "So if you're intent on robbing me as well, you may as well save yourself the trouble. I have nothing, no money, no wares, no extra clothes, nothing, not even a mule." "I see that, my friend," the young man said, walking closer to where Shamsai stood. "How old are you?" "I'm 38. Why?" "You look very young. You look fine." "Are you willing then, my friend?" Shamsai looked puzzled. "Willing to do what?" The stranger looked around him and then at Shamsai. "No one is around for miles, not even the farmers. They have cut the grain stalks and have gone off to Akuba to sell them. Won't you join me for a little pleasure?" So the guy's gay. Shamsai looked around. "I don't know what you're talking about, fellow. I see no woman around." The man laughed heartily. "I see you have a sense of humor. My weary friend, there is pleasure with all flesh. Haven't you learned? Man and woman, man and beast, man and man as well." "I'm not interested," said Shamsai. "Right now I must get to the village and see about earning some business so that I can buy myself another mule and start a new business." The stranger reached into his trousers, withdrew a small pouch, and poured its shining contents into the palms of his hand. "Look, friend, I can help you. You wouldn't have to struggle for days and nights in Akuba, trying to earn enough money for food, lodging, and a mule. I can give you enough money to do that, plus rebuild your business with a humble investment." Shamsai eyed the gold nuggets in the stranger's hand and swallowed hard. "Where did you get all that?" "What does it matter? I have it. It's mine, and there's a lot more where this came from. See all this land here? My father owns it. I am his only son, and he gives me whatever I ask for. And whenever I request it, my life is paradise. I enjoy whatever I desire. Men, women, even beasts. These nuggets can be yours, my friend, but you'll have to earn it. Now, are you interested?" Shamsai argued no further. Shamsai looked at the mule and pondered. Should he buy it or not? The mule would not look at him and kept turning its head away from his steer. So I'm guessing that he might have done what he had to do in order to get, like, the nuggets of gold. Right? So I'm guessing that he might have done... Right, okay. It's working. "So what do you say?" the mule dealer asked, circling both Shamsai and the mule. "Nice and sturdy looking, eh? Strong, obedient, well-trained? Everything. Good muscle tone, clean, healthy. 200 dinars. You will not find a better deal elsewhere." "Not too fast." Not so fast. The last mule I purchased was very disobedient. I was assured that it would obey my every wish. It didn't. Well, I tried to say it out. Well, I'd say try it out. Execute a command. Back off, Shamsai shouted at the mule. The mule looked at him and blinked. Go forward, ho! The mule shook its head and blinked once more. See what I mean? I see what the problem is, the mule dealer said, smiling. I don't think you're relating appropriately to the animal. The dealer approached the mule and began to pet its short mane while talking softly to it. The mule complied immediately to the gentle command of the dealer and started to walk, where the dealer ordered it to halt in the same tone of voice. The mule stood still. Shamsai approached the mule and started to caress it, speaking in a soft tone of voice. The mule, however, was not impressed and threw its head back, gnashing its teeth. Perhaps there is a personal conflict. Perhaps there is a personality conflict, the dealer mused. Mules are very sensitive animals. It's enough I am insulted by a mule. You don't have to insult me, too. I'll buy the animal from you, nevertheless, if you cut the price in half. No more than a quarter of the price off. A quarter. Listen, I'm doing you a favor by taking it off your hands. The animal's stupid. It won't listen to anyone but yourself. How will you ever sell it? No more than a quarter off the price. Shamsai bought the mule and paid with the money the stranger in the field had given him. The dealer eyed, so basically he had sold his soul, like, for money. So basically he probably had sex with the dude in the field, and for money, right? I feel like this book is ahead of its time because it was published in 1981 when this type of talk and this type of behavior was not acceptable, right? But today, like, this is something that everybody speaks about. But back then, nobody would talk about this type of thing, you know, like gay stuff and all that. Right? So, okay. The dealer eyed the gold pieces enviously and watched Shamsai pour several remaining pieces into a small pouch which hung from his neck. Taking the reins of the mule, Shamsai kicked the animal in the thigh and watched proudly how it moved without further ado. He mounted it and directed it out of Akuba towards Abadan. So, this guy, Shamsai, would just do anything he would just go with, he was godless, like, he would just go with whatever he felt he wanted to do. So, like, he didn't care. He will, even if he's not attracted to men, he'll go and have sex with a man. If he sees a woman he wants, he'll just rape her. You know, like, he was just, like, a really bad guy. He's a bad dude. Winter was setting in, and fierce winds made his journey difficult. He had been so preoccupied with buying a decent mule that he had overlooked buying some blankets and durable winter gear. Even as the sun went down, he urged his mule on further, as if he believed it would become warmer farther along the road. But farther along the road, the wind began swirling sand in his eyes, blinding him momentarily, making it difficult for him to see where he was heading. Even his newly purchased mule started to protest, stopping suddenly and turning completely around, its back to the wind. Hey, Shamsai shouted above the howling wind. Where do you think you're going? Who's the master around here? Shamsai tried with much effort to turn the mule around to face Abadan again, but the animal refused stubbornly and began hopping, kicking its hind legs into the air. Right? Shamsai held on fast as the animal swerved him round and round, jolting him from the saddle into the air. Shamsai landed on the rocky ground, having cast off its rider. The mule calmed down and simply stood still in the wind, continuing to face the opposite direction. Shamsai leapt to his feet and furiously kicked the animal on its side. The mule turned on him, gnashing its heavy jaws and screeching. Shamsai ran for cover, the mule at its heels. As if it had suddenly forgotten its master's kick, the mule calmed down and walked humbly behind the fleeing Shamsai, following him into a small cavern in the side of one of the mountains along the road. Cautiously, Shamsai unpacked the mule and poured some grains from a pouch which hung from the saddlebag. After gathering some wood, he built a fire and warmed himself. Not much food remained in the saddlebag, but whatever was left he roasted and ate. Then, leaning back against the ragged wall of the cave, he began to doze. Shamsai woke in a cold sweat. "What if she tells him?" he asked his mule. "Answer me, what if she tells her husband?" The mule paid him no mind and lay quietly in the corner of the cave, sound asleep. "Well, what does it matter anyway? I'm not going back to Baghdad. I'll never again return there, just in case. Abadan, my friend, is where we will start life anew. Abadan, my friend, is where we will start life anew. You and I. No one would ever think of looking for me there. It's no place for a Jew." Shamsai leaned back and readjusted the one blanket he had brought with him. The fire was flickering and dying, but he was too lazy to get up and add more wood. Soon he would rise. Soon he dozed off and found himself back in the field of Al-Kuba, lying beside the stranger. Oh, so it was all a dream. So he didn't get the mule or anything. "I thank you for a good time," the stranger said, smiling at Shamsai. "Why are you so downcast? Did you not enjoy it too?" Shamsai turned slowly toward the man in the grass and swallowed. "Of course I did." "So why are you so downcast?" "I don't know, stranger. Perhaps you feel guilty?" "Guilty? Me? Never." Shamsai never feels guilty about anything, absolutely nothing. "So why feel depressed about it? Does it make sense to feel bad about feeling good?" "No, I guess not. It doesn't make any sense." "Is there then perhaps something wrong or immoral about what you just did?" "Of course it's immoral," Shamsai shouted. "Everyone knows that. What about adultery? What about rape?" Shamsai awoke in a cold sweat again. "Who said that?" Okay, so I'm not sure if this is his dreams or the reality or whatever's happening, right? Is he actually with the young man? Or did he actually do the deed? I'm not sure. "Who said that?" he yelled in the dark cave. It was not the stranger's voice in the dream. It sounded as if it were coming from inside the cave. Jumping to his feet, he withdrew his hunting knife and waved it threateningly at his shadow, which danced hauntingly in the flickering light of the dying flames. "Who said that?" he shouted again. He was sure the voice was not part of the dream. It had awakened him. There was someone else in the cave. Was it Leia's husband Joseph? Breathing heavily, he swerved around to face the intruder behind him. But no one was there. The mule raised its head slowly, glancing at its melancholic master, and went back to sleep. Assured that he was alone, Shamsai left the cave to fetch more wood for the fire. Outside, the wind howled ferociously, making it difficult for him to carry the sticks up the hill and into the cave. Soon the fire was blazing fully once more, and he warmed his face and hands by its heat. Again he wrapped himself in his blanket and sat up against the wall, staring at the prone form of his mule in the corner. As he relaxed, he fantasized about the stranger in Akuba. So he was actually with the stranger. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so he was with the guy, and then the guy gave him money, and then he went to get this mule, and blah, 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 da, da, da. He wished the stranger could be with him now that he was stranded alone in a cave, chilled to the bone in spite of his blanket and the flames that danced before him. He smiled as he remembered the stranger's whimsical remarks. There was pleasure with all flesh. Shamsai's smile spread widely across his face. Man, beast, anything, he thought. Oh my god, he's gonna, go and rape his animal. So creepy. What's wrong with these people? You know, Let me do this. Second. I know what to do. Okay. Hold on. Okay, that's that. Okay, so, he smiled as he remembered the stranger's whimsical remarks. There's pleasure, no flesh. Shamsai smiled, spread widely across his face. Man, beast, anything, he thought. Remembering the stranger's words, he chuckled to himself, and then, turning suddenly towards the shadow on the wall, he boldly shouted, "What about adultery? What about rape? I'll tell you what about them. There's no such thing as immorality. Nothing is wrong, or right, or black or white, or true or false. You hear me? Nothing. Every man makes his own rules. In life, we are no different from the beasts in the field, except that we can get away with much more than they can." Shamsai roared with a nervous laughter and startled his mule. Regaining his composure, he stared at his mule, lying peacefully on the ground. Man or beast, he mumbled to himself as he edged his way toward the animal. Man or beast? The animal turned its head to catch a curious glimpse of its master, and then rested its head on the ground. Shamsai moved closer and began to think about the man in the field near Akuba. Oh, he's disgusting. This story is like really disturbing. It's just too disturbing, you know? Like okay, chapter 3. Abadan. So he goes to Abadan, right? Abadan, he thought to himself. Beautiful, lustful Abadan. He pulled at the reins to ease the mule's pace as it made its way through the busy marketplace, where thousands of men and women moved hurriedly from one side of the narrow street to the other, without watching out for mules or carts. This was his kind of city, where it was every man for himself, where only the fittest could survive. As he rode up the main street, an elderly man fell into the path of his mule. Shamsai guided the animal over the human obstacle, while the fallen man cursed him in Arabic. He spat at the man and rode on. Shamsai was not going to let anyone get in his way. He was a real bad guy. "You!" he shouted at a thin young man with the large round eyes. "Where's the inn around here?" The man turned away and walked off, ignoring Shamsai's rude approach. Shamsai urged his mule toward the man, and as he rode alongside him, gave him a powerful kick in the ribs that sent him flying into a stand laden with freshly painted pottery. The stand caved in under the weight of the fallen man, who squirmed in pain amid the broken glass of the earthenware. "I asked you a question, fella. All you had to do was respond." The owner shoved the fallen man, off his weirs and began arguing with him, as Shamsai rode off to find an inn. Meanwhile, the wounded victim pointed towards Shamsai, screaming his accusations, drawing a crowd that began to chase after the culprit. Shamsai was soon overtaken by 4 police officers, who jumped him and wrestled him to the ground. Shamsai fought the officers with all he had: his feet, his hands, and his dagger. One policeman withdrew his sword and prepared to attack Shamsai to pieces, when suddenly a shot rang out. The officers withdrew immediately from their captive, leaving Shamsai poised with his dagger. Looking behind them, he saw a burly man in an Arabian dress, a smoking rifle in his right hand. "Leave the man alone," he ordered. The policemen returned their swords to their sheaths and went off on their way, leaving Shamsai to face the man who had saved his life. Listen, the way Shamsai is behaving, like, I don't care about him. Like, if anything happens to him, good riddance, you know? He's a monster. Literally, he's a monster. Shamsai put away his dagger when he noticed the big man hand over his rifle to one of the many heavily armed men who surrounded him. Approaching Shamsai, the stranger smiled and extended his hand. Sheikh Akhtar ibn Moswiya, at your service. Thank you, Shamsai said, bowing. I will be forever grateful for your intervention. You saved my life. I more than saved your life, young man. This is Abadan. Justice here is meted out in a very fascinating manner. Why did you come to my rescue? Shamsai asked. I was impressed by your animal instinct. I need men for my trade, men who are afraid of nothing, who will fight like animals when they must. Well, I appreciate your compliments. I owe you my life. The sheikh smiled at Shamsai and then broke into a round of wild laughter. Well said, my friend, he said. Well said, indeed. You do owe me your life. You will work for me, yes? Well, I was thinking of starting my own business in Abadan. And I was thinking of having you work for me instead, yes? Thank you for your offer. What kind of work do you have in mind for me? I am a mule trader, chief mule trader of this entire region. Thousands of mules, even more horses, camels too. Everyone buys their animals from me. But I have no experience in mule trading. No experience necessary. I do the trading. You will be armed like these men here. You will become a soldier of Sheikh Akhtar ibn Moswiya. You will protect our herds, and on occasion you will help us replenish our supply. Where do you purchase your animals? The men broke out into wild laughter, loud laughter, joined by the sheikh. Shamsai laughed with them as if to assure them that he too was in on whatever it was they were laughing about. Sheikh Akhtar ibn Moswiya does not purchase from anyone. We simply gather our flocks from others, less worthy of living. Oh, so they are bandits, that are thieves, and they kill them. Shamsai swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain smiling. He was going to show them that he was as tough as they assumed he was. After all, he really did have no scruples. The sheikh extended his hand again, and Shamsai shook it warmly. The others raised their rifles and cheered. Where do I report? Shamsai asked, preparing to mount his mule. You report right here and now. Well, let's be reasonable, sheikh. I have just arrived from a very tiresome journey. I must get settled first. We will see to it that you get settled right away. You can stay with us. The comforts of our barracks, far surpass those you envision at the inn of Abadan. Right, men? The men raised their rifles high and cheered. We have nothing you need, young man. We have everything you need, young man. Baths, bedding, clothing, food without limit, and whatever else you desire. Shamsai mounted his mule and followed the sheikh and his men on their horses. The sheikh's estate was not far from the main sector of the city, concealed by tall trees and thick bushes, surrounded by heavily armed guards and dotted with small stone buildings, in which the guards were housed. As they entered the estate, Shamsai noticed the neighboring hills, blanketed by large herds of livestock. He felt at home right away. The sheikh's servants showed him to a private room, provided him with a fresh change of clothing, and served him a feast that compensated for all the meals he had missed during his escapades from Baghdad to Akuba to Abadan. Shamsai felt like a king, like a sheikh. We will get along well, the sheikh told him at dinner that night, as long as you respond to my every command. In return, I promise you all the luxuries you could possibly want. So, this is what happens when you, sell your soul for money. It's really sad, when you, sell your soul for money. It's really sad, Okay. After the meal, Shamsai followed one of the guards back to the barracks. And so you are all slaves to this big man, eh? Better keep your voice down, Shamsai, if you wish to survive. No malice intended, but tell me, what happens if someone wishes to quit and just live on his own? You are a very curious fellow, Shamsai. Come with me, and I will show you what happens. The two walked towards the open fields until they came upon a small stone building with a small window and a steel door. Look inside, this escort said. Shamsai peered in and saw two men, suspended upside down from the ceiling. So that's what happens? Not always. Our master has a very compassionate heart. He allows some dissidents to buy their way out with 50,000 dinar, but most really prefer life here. In your case, I think he would probably turn you back to the authorities. They have their own methods of dealing with criminals, unless, of course, you can come up with a 50,000 dinner. 50,000 dinner? 50,000 dinner? Shamsai kept thinking to himself as he squirmed in his bed that night. 50,000 dinner. Or lifetime enslavement. No one rules over Shamsai, he thought angrily. No one. Perspiring profusely, he tossed and turned beneath his warm blankets as he grew increasingly furious. Who did that fat man think he was, anyway? How could he could have fought off those officers without his help. But now he owed his very life to this big hunk of flesh. One day he would certainly escape to another part of the country. One day soon. But 2 years passed, and Shamsai was still the Sheikh's slave. Then one night, after a long day of herding mules, he found a private spot in the field, and composed a brief letter to his brother Shaul in Baghdad. He needed money because, as Sheikh Akhtar's property, all his money had been confiscated and now belonged to the Sheikh. Unlike others, he could never buy himself out because the Sheikh had saved his life, and as far as the Sheikh was concerned, no amount of money would suffice for his freedom. All Shamsai wanted now was some money to make it on his own, so he could flee inconspicuously while herding the mules in the hills. One day soon, he had enough. Shamsai as slave? Never. Dear brother Shaul, he wrote. Ah, yes, my dear brother Shaul, he thought. I hate your face, and I have always despised you. But now I need your assistance. Please bring me my jewels. I need money. I will meet you at the southern road to Abadad, beside the waterfall, which runs into the creek. I will reward you handsomely for your help, he wrote. You miserable fool, he thought as he wrote. I need the money for a tremendous deal which will land the two of us in millions, enough to live off independently the remainder of our lives. Shamsai drew a little map on the bottom of the page to indicate the very spot where they were to meet. He concealed the letter in his shirt and waited for Friday, when his guard shift would be permitted into the city, to visit prostitutes and make purchases without money, of course. No one dared to withhold anything from the Sheikh's guards. The postman took Shamsai's letter with trembling hands and bowed down to the slave of Sheikh Akhtar. Yes, sir, I will make certain this is dispatched immediately with the next caravan to Baghdad. And so it was all set. His brother the fool would certainly bring him the money to the designated spot, and each day Shamsai would herd his flocks near the waterfall, his eyes gazing hopefully at the trail which branched off the main road to Abadan. And each time he would fail to see his brother approaching, he would become more and more fearful that perhaps his brother had simply taken the money for himself. Now that he knew from the letter where Shamsai had concealed it, why should Shaul not have simply entered his abandoned hut in Baghdad and taken the valuables he had written about? Shamsai tried to reassure himself. Shaul's a fool, he thought he would say to the mules he herded. Shaul loves money. Surely he will comply with my request, if he knows it will bring him millions. The mules nodded and continued grazing as Shamsai's eyes fixed themselves again and again on the trail leading to the creek. But Shaul did not come. Can you imagine? After 5 days, Shamsai grew worried and decided to write his brother a second time. Again, he found a private spot in the fields near the herd, and again he began to write, when suddenly he heard a familiar voice. Greetings, Shamsai. Shamsai instinctively crumpled the paper in his hands and looked up at the sheikh, who stood hovering over him, flanked by armed guards. The sheikh dropped the folded piece of paper on Shamsai's lap and roared with laughter. Here, Shamsai, I thought I would save you from the trouble of writing to your brother in Baghdad a second time. Here is your first letter. It would be much quicker if you simply copied it, eh? Everyone laughed but Shamsai. Shamsai sat motionless, his mind formulating horrid visions of a slow, painful death, hanging upside down from a ceiling. He took a deep breath and rose. Well, Sheikh, what are you going to do now? Hang me from some ceiling? Ho! So you already know your fate, eh? Well, I prefer to make good use of you first, young man. After all, why waste a good, strong body like yours? You will first serve as my personal slave. No privileges, no comforts. You will sleep in the barns and eat scraps and leftovers. I will treat you like the pig you are, and perhaps after 5 years you will have learned your lesson. 5 years? I'd rather die than live like a slave. The sheikh motioned to one of the guards to step forward. Take the scoundrel to the torture chamber and tie him to the ceiling. He refuses to cooperate. Shamsai suddenly lurched forward and plunged into the huge belly of the sheikh, sending him flying into one of his guards, both landing on the ground. He then wrestled another guard to the ground and confiscated his rifle. Shamsai held the three of them at gunpoint. "If it's the last thing I do on this earth," he shouted, "I am going to blast your fat pig heads off your shoulders, sheikh. You're a fool, Shamsai. You are surrounded. My men are all around you at this moment." "I know they are," Shamsai shouted at the top of his lungs, making certain that they all heard him. "And if any of them so much as make a move, it will be the end of you, sheikh." "Drop your arms," the sheikh shouted to his men. Shamsai gloated with pride as he heard many guns fall to the ground. "Listen to me, all of you," he shouted. "You don't need this beast as your leader. Why don't you take advantage and become free men? Why don't you take over the entire estate and run it on your own?" "You are a foolish man," Sheikh said, still on the ground. "I am more powerful than these little fools. These silly fools. If they try anything like that, my brothers will come running, swinging their swords ruthlessly. It's your choice, men. As for me, I'm getting out of here. Anyone who tries to shoot me is going to end up shooting the sheikh." Shamsai rammed his rifle into the sheikh's chest and ordered him to rise. The sheikh obeyed nervously and followed Shamsai through the ranks of his guards, who stood helplessly and watched. When he reached one of the mules, Shamsai forced the sheikh up ahead of him, and then jumped up behind, now pressing the muzzle of his rifle on the sheikh's neck. "Gedap!" he shouted, kicking the mule, and he rode off into the hills. While they were still in view, the guards mounted their horses and rode after them. Shamsai assumed they were coming after him, pulled the trigger and blasted the sheikh's heads off. So he assumed they were coming after him, so he shot the sheikh. He shot the sheriff. "I shot the sheriff, but I swear it wasn't self-defense. Ooh, 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 ooh." High-tech Bullington. Sheriff. Yeah, he's your king. Okay. Alright, so he shot the guy. He then turned towards the charging horses behind him and was about to fire when he noticed the approaching men were unarmed. He remained motionless, waiting for them to slow down, his weapon still pointed at them. The horses came to a halt and all dismounted and prostrated themselves before Shamsai, praising him to Allah. "You are our new leader. You are our new leader," they chanted. Shamsai lowered his rifle and smiled victoriously. He had a feeling they would prefer him to the sheikh. He would be much more lenient with them than the sheikh had been. Some of the guards ran over to the remains of the sheikh and spat on it, while others kicked it. It's typical Muslim behavior. Shamsai was helped off the mule and onto a handsome palomino steed and rode back with his escort to take over the sheikh's estate. His only remaining worry, however, was the sheikh's brothers and their armies. Abadan was no longer safe. It would take the enemy at least 3 days to arrive for battle. Shamsai figured, and he would need about that much time to flee with everything he could get his hands on. As he rode through the city toward the sheikh's estate, he made a quick stop at the post office and accosted the postman. Can you imagine? It's ridiculous. As he rode through the city toward the sheikh's estate, he made a quick stop at the post office and accosted the postman. It's working. Ridiculous. Okay. This guy is like he's a very vicious, wild man. He's crazy. Literally, like... "Okay, little man," he roared, slamming the postal officer against the wall. "How did my letter to Baghdad end up in the hands of the sheikh? Answer me, you weasel. How?" Please, hear me out. I had no choice. I wanted to send it out, but I was being watched. The sheikh's personal aides followed you here. They demanded I turn the letter over to the sheikh." Shamsai let the man go. I sent it off anyway. After I gave them your letter, I rewrote it on another piece of paper and sent it off. I hate the sheikh and I wanted to help you to your freedom." "Bah! You say that now because you see I am in charge. Please spare me. I speak only the truth. I am a devout Muslim." Muslims, you can trust a Muslim. They're allowed to lie. There's something called talaq. They're allowed to lie, right? So Shamsai felt like slicing the man's body in half, but decided to believe him. The sheikh's slaves served their new master as loyally as they had served the sheikh. Every evening, dancers twirled to his delight with three musicians played softly in the background. Shamsai was sheikh, but Shamsai was also worried. Perhaps some of the sheikh's closer aides were not so loyal after all. Who among them was going to spread the news of the sheikh's death to his brothers in Mosul? Walking out into the open, he took a deep breath of the fresh air, relieved from the heavy scent of the incense which burned inside the sheikh's quarters. He strode across the grass toward the barracks of the higher ranking guard, those closest to the sheikh staying within the shadows. He posted himself near a window and crouched. Throughout the night, he slid from one building to the next, unnoticed by anyone. Periodically, he would hear some of the men querying as to his whereabouts, while others answered that he was probably in the harem. Soon, however, the camp was asleep. Shamsai, too, had dozed off, leaning against the stone base of the building, where the sheikh's aides slept. It was not dawn which awakened Shamsai the following morning, but the murmuring of plotting voices. Shamsai shook his head violently, trying to regain his senses fully, and then pressed his ear to the wall of the building. This is what he had been waiting for. "Fool," one said. "Forget the sheikh's brothers. We can become immensely wealthy. I overheard yesterday how the postman in Abadan did indeed send off a copy of Shamsai's letter to his brother. Soon his brother will be arriving with the great treasures." Fool yourself, cried another. "You think he would travel all this way with treasures without fearing an attack? He will find a way. Maybe he will carry with him only a pearl or a diamond, easily concealed. I know these merchants. They are Jews. Jews are clever at this." "Shamsai's a Jew?" a third laughed. "Shamsai's a barbarian. I have met many Jews in my lifetime. Shamsai cannot possibly be a Jew." "Listen, you idiots. I have prepared some of the men too. Welcome Shamsai's brother by the creek. Soon, my friends, the creek will flow with his brother's blood, and our homes will flow with the endless riches. Why can't we just take the sheikh's gold and run? What do we need Shamsai's money for?" "Because we can't get near the sheikh's treasures. The men are on Shamsai's side. Sooner or later, Shamsai will finish us off, since we were closest to the sheikh. Let us flee for our lives now, with a few men who remain loyal to us, and enrich ourselves with Shamsai's own money." Shamsai scrambled into the woods and headed toward the creek. What if the guards, dispatched by the sheikh's aides, had already met his brother? His brother would be mercilessly cut to pieces, and his own treasures of jewels would be stolen from him. Shamsai decided then and there to flee. It would, after all, be foolish to remain as sheikh, only to face the sheikh's brother or other forces of opposition, from within and from without. Shamsai wanted out. He didn't want to be sheikh anyway. He wanted his freedom. He saddled his mule and some wares and headed quietly out of the camp. If his brother was not at the creek that morning, dead or alive, he would continue traveling to another region and do business with the expensive rugs he had taken. He would start all over again. In fact, he thought, smiling to himself, he would head north to Akuba, where he would meet with a stranger in the field again, do him a favor once more, and acquire enough money to start anew. Shamsai approached the place where he was to meet his brother as he bent down to wash his face in the creek. He felt a sharp pain in his back. Pulling himself upright, he realized it was not a sprain, it was a dagger. Like a wounded animal, he jumped to his feet and withdrew his sword, ready to challenge his predator. 4 men emerged with their swords drawn, and slowly they surrounded him. He recognized them all. They were the sheikh's personal bodyguards. What a fool to have come here. The stranger in Akuba would have supplied him with all the money he needed. And as for his brother's safety, he had never cared much for him anyway. Shamsai swung his sword violently, in spite of the excruciating pain in his back. The men closed in calmly and artfully plunged their swords into Shamsai's already wounded body. Shamsai let out a scream that terrified him more than anything else. He floated away from his pierced body and hovered over the 4 Arabians as they withdrew their swords from his corpse. In great anguish, he observed how they cut him to pieces and buried him, leaving no evidence of the killing. Shamsai was safe now. He was dead. But what bothered him more was that death was not the end. It was only the beginning. He had never believed in life after death. Now, to his dismay, he found himself disembodied, but still conscious. "Now what?" he asked. Come, a voice beckoned. Come, Shamsai, the son of Oved. It was a distant voice. Could it be that there was a heavenly tribunal after all? Could it be that there was a god? Shamsai wanted to die, but it was too late. He was already dead. Step forward and account for your deeds. Deeds? He asked. Shamsai wanted... Still working. Mazel tov. Deeds? He asked. What deeds? You should not know from any of my deeds. Shamsai wanted to hide. He wanted to shut his eyes. But he had none to shut. He wanted to run away, but he had no legs. No, he tried to scream, but he had no voice. Leave me alone, I want to die. Shamsai found himself being propelled into space, but it wasn't the space he had often stared into as a child. There were no stars, no planets, no moon, just blackness. Shamsai screamed in his consciousness. He screamed and he heard his voice echoing from one end of the universe to the other. As he sped through the black, his entire earthly life unfolded rapidly before him, and he caught glimpses here and there of his family, his childhood, his brother Shaul. Shaul, he shouted, Shaul! Beware of those Arabians, they'll kill you, go back! But Shaul couldn't hear. He was only an infant. He saw his parents and then his uncles, aunts, the rabbi who tried to convince the parents to allow him to attend the yeshiva. Shamsai saw himself protest to his parents. No yeshiva? Yeshiva was for mules. No yeshiva. Yeshiva was for mules. And then he saw mules and more mules. All his adult life, he was with the mules. Shamsai was for the mules. Shamsai lay with the mules. Please, it's too early. I wasn't prepared. I want to repent. I wanted to repent honestly, but I was killed prematurely. Let me go back, honest. So now he's begging with the heavenly angels to let him go back and fix what he'd done, right? But he's dead, so... Come forward, Shamsai, the son of Oved. Your protests are in vain. Your time has come to appear before the master of the universe. No one took you prematurely. You caused it all on your own through your wicked deeds. He who labors on Friday will have what to eat on the Sabbath. He who does not labor on Friday, what will he then have to eat on the Sabbath? You had your opportunity to labor and to achieve, but you abused not only yourself, but others as well. Now it is too late. Please, Shamsai protested. One little chance. I will go back to Baghdad, publicize all my wrongs, and repent truthfully. Now that your soul has left your body, it is easy to make such promises, Shamsai. But you know very well that you had no intentions to repent before you died. Indeed, you were well on your way to return to the stranger in Akuba. He's gonna go and have sex with a man. Even though, like, whatever. I have nothing against the gays, but it's considered a sin, but he was like, this guy was like an animal. He didn't have any preference. Even animals have preferences, but this guy had no preferences at all. Like, he would sleep with, literally he would like fuck anything. You know, he would sleep with his donkey, like Islamists do. You know, it's their culture. So he didn't act like a very pious person. Your evil activities, specifically in regards to the woman Leah, the wife of Joseph, right, and he wanted to rape her, are irreparable, even in Gehenna. You can't repair that, what you tried to do to that woman in hell. You can't even repair that in hell. So he's too evil to get into hell, right? Because hell, as we learn, is the cleansing where a person goes in order to enter paradise. But he was too evil to even get into paradise. And so that is why his soul is going to suffer and be chased around by demons or evil angels hither and thither, and he's going to suffer. The damage and suffering you have caused the woman are without restitution in the spiritual world. Your soul is hereby banished from its spiritual origin until it has been appropriately repaired in the lower worlds. You are sentenced to wander the earth in limbo, pursued by the very angels you yourself created through your wicked deeds. Go now, right? So basically, we are taught, right, as Jewish people, that our behavior, our deeds, whatever we do, whatever we say creates, if we do good things and we say good things, it creates good angels. And if we do evil things and say evil things, it creates bad demons and devils and angels. So, right. Chapter 4. Here I come, my brother, sang Shaul, the cobbler, as he gently urged his old mule onward. Abadan, Abadan, he sang, taking in the fresh, crisp morning air. Abadan, Abadan, here we come, Abadan, and here I come, my brother, my crazed brother Shamsai, here I come, let's get rich together, Abadan, Abadan. So now his brother, because he got the letter, he's coming into a trap. Shaul stopped the mule and cupped his hand over his ear. Can't hear a thing, mule. Should have heard a waterfall somewhere around here. No sound of anything. He withdrew Shamsai's letter and studied the map again. I don't understand it at all, he said, urging the mule onward. Why was the letter written in someone else's handwriting? Shamsai was not an expert at drawing maps, but the map on the letter was hard to read, and the strange handwriting was illegible. I don't know what that means. Shaul smiled. No doubt his brother had struck it rich in Abadan, surrounded by busy secretaries who composed his letters and drew his maps. Abadan, Abadan, here I come, he sang joyfully, visualizing the wealth and power. Shamsai, your brother is on his way. Your blood runs through me, even though we despise each other. Your blood runs through me, Shamsai, especially when you are rich, my brother, because Shaul is poor. Here I come, Shamsai, because your blood runs. The mule stopped in its tracks. Shaul looked up and trembled. There stood a mule, grazing on some grass. In the silence Shaul heard the waterfall in the distance. He was approaching the meeting place, and sure enough there was a mule, with a traveling blanket and a food pouch. But where was Shamsai? Shaul was about to continue riding over the hill toward the sound of the waterfall, when he noticed a trail of blood. Oh my God, he said, sliding off his animal. He walked over to where the mule stood and removed the food pouch. It was splattered with blood, and so were the blankets and the mule. He quickly mounted his own animal and rode over to the mule to take it by the reins. Throwing several quick glances around the area, he decided not to remain any longer looking for a dead or wounded Shamsai. There were probably marauders lurking in the wooded area, in the direction of the waterfall. Maybe they were waiting for him, too. Farewell, brother of mine, he said solemnly. Thank you for your jewels and for your mule. Shaul rode along as quickly as the animals would move, riding through the tall, dry grass of the Abadan plains, in the direction of Baghdad. Oh, no, he said suddenly, stopping the mule from going any further. We can't go back to Baghdad. I am now in the possession of Shamsai's jewels. If I exchange them in Baghdad, I will have to contend with all his creditors. So he was in debt, right? All of Baghdad wants a part of Shamsai. Joseph wants his blood, but the earth got that. The creditors want his money. I, Shaul, have that. What will be left for Shamsai's impoverished brother? A bloody food pouch, perhaps? A mule? A stained blanket? No, my two friends. Shaul is going to Aqaba. Shaul is going to sell the jewels and start life anew as the wealthiest cobbler in Iraq. Shaul journeyed the entire day along the desert trail to Aqaba. He had hoped to make it by nightfall, but the sun went down and the darkness forced him to seek some shelter in the mountains where he would be protected from the biting evening winds. He noticed several small caverns and rode toward them cautiously, hoping they were not already occupied. Inside a cave, Shaul unpacked the mules, gathered together several twigs and branches, scattered outside, and built himself a fire. He then sat down against the wall of the cave and started to eat from the provisions he had brought along for the trip. The wine he had brought along flowed warmly down his throat as he emptied the bottle in his mouth. It was the only way he could sleep, especially on cold nights. They killed me, Shamsai told him in his dream. They killed me with long swords. Shaul smiled in his sleep and answered aloud, So, what is there to complain about? I'm sure it didn't hurt. It was extremely painful, you imbecile. So it was painful. So, remember the toothache you had as a child? What was more painful, Shamsai? The toothache or the swords? The toothache by far. See? But they killed me. The toothache didn't kill me, you fool. So they killed you. What is there to worry about? I have your jewels in safekeeping. Nothing to worry about. Idiot, to hell with my jewels. What good are jewels in the afterlife? You can't take them with you. Ho, ho, ho. Listen to Shamsai, the great believer in the afterlife. Since when did you become so religious? When you get to where I am, Shaul, you won't be laughing. You too will believe in the afterlife. Is there wine there? Yes, plenty, but you have to earn it. How do I earn it? Go back to Baghdad and pay my creditors. It will help me greatly. It will help you as well. Sorry, Shamsai. I'm on my way to Akuba to sell your jewels. You owe it to me. I am your brother, remember? You greedy fool, you! Go back and pay my debts. Sorry. Pray for me, then. I am beneath less than a foot of soil, with no marker and no one to mourn for me, no one to recite Kaddish. I am thoroughly amazed, Shamsai. Really, when did you become so religious? Shaul woke up, startled. The mule was kicking in the air. The mules were kicking in the air and gnashing their teeth. He scrambled to his feet and struggled to keep his balance, his head aching from the sudden awakening and the after effects of the wine. Quickly he withdrew his dagger and looked about him at the dancing shadows on the walls of the cave. Someone was there. Who's there? He shouted. Answer me, or I will cut you to shreds. The wind began to howl fiercely, and Shaul became petrified as hundreds of bats suddenly flew overhead, heading directly through the mouth of the cave. The mules were screeching at the top of their lungs, struggling to free themselves from the reins that bound them. Who is it? Shaul shouted again. This time his voice echoed. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Shaul trembled, his dagger shaking loosely in his grip. Bury me, a voice cried from the howling wind. Or was he just imagining things? The wine, he thought. Too much wine. He was hearing things. But the mules, they were the mules. Why were the mules panicking? He watched as the mules finally struggled free and ran from the cave, leaving him alone. Bury me, the voice shouted as the wind became so fierce it entered the cave and extinguished the flames. Left in the pitch black, Shaul retreated against the wall as if someone was approaching, but he saw no one. He held his dagger extended, waving it around from right to left and then from left to right. No one would be able to draw near to him without confronting the blade. Bury me, or I will bury you! Shaul screamed in fright and ran from the cave, stumbling over a fallen branch, rolling down the side of the mountain onto the trail to Akuba. As he tumbled, he lost his grip and dropped his weapon. Struggling to his feet, he limped painfully along the road, shouting, terrified, Help me! Help me! Although he was in great pain from the fall, Shaul ran toward a campfire he saw in the distance and waved violently in the darkness as if expecting whoever was there to notice him. He drew closer and closer to the campfire, calling desperately for help. Bury me! The voice continued to howl through the wind. Shaul screamed again and was relieved to see the figure of a man seated by the campfire. He ran over to the man and grabbed him by the shoulders, shaking him violently. Please, please help me. I will pay you in jewels. Let me remain with you till dawn, please. Certainly, the man said, accepting 2 pearls as payment. Shaul felt reassured by the man's calm tone of voice. You will remain with me until dawn. Calm yourself. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. The man then turned towards Shaul and smiled warmly. Shamsai! Shaul screamed, leaping to his feet. He ran like he had never run before, propelling himself faster and faster into the black of the night until he fell to the ground beneath him, and then he fell into the calm space that follows the cliff of every mountain. Shamsai! Shamsai laughed into his ears as he fell. Fool! Shamsai laughed into his ears. You foolish brother of mine! Why did you run? There is no wine here. Uh-oh. So his brother died too? So maybe because of Shamsai, he made his brother get killed. I'm not sure what's happening, but I need the bathroom, so bear with me. I need the bathroom. What's it called? Intermission? Wish I didn't have a headache. Always a headache. Right? Continuing the story. Okay, chapter 5. Baghdad, 1911. You have a very unusual name, he remarked. The girl looked up at him from the grass and admired his tall, slim form. What's so unusual about it, Ephraim? Ephraim sat down beside her and reclined against a rock. I don't know. I guess I just never met any girl before named Shira. It means song, she said, smiling at him, but Ephraim's eyes were focused elsewhere. He was becoming afraid to look at her too much, for she was very attractive and feminine. He had never felt as prepared for marriage as he did now. In the presence of Shira, ready or not, he wanted to marry her tomorrow. I know what it means, he said, looking at her. It's so fitting. You're indeed like a song, Shira. A song I have been trying to sing since I first became interested in girls. That couldn't be too long ago. You're only 14. I don't remember how long ago I first became interested, but one thing I do know. I have never been attracted to a girl as I have to you, ever. Your parents really know you well, I see. What do you mean? Well, they introduced you to me. Yes, they want me to marry. They want me to marry soon. I'm big for my age. I just don't feel ready enough. That's all. All my brothers and sisters married young, 15, 16. I'm not ready. Ephraim looked at the girl beside him and swallowed hard. But it depends, he continued. It depends upon the quality of the prospect. And I like your qualities. Shira looked down at the trickling water which wound its way along the narrow creek in front of them. I like you too, Ephraim, but I'm concerned about you. About me? What for? You were very ill when you returned from Akuba several months ago. It really bothered me. You were trembling terribly. I was very afraid of you when I saw your convulsions, and so was everyone else. What was it? Ephraim rose and walked over to the adjoining tree. How am I supposed to know? He said angrily. It just happened once, that's all. No one else seems to be worried about it. The physician said it was nothing but some trouble with my nerves. I mean, it was probably related to the trip, the journey from Akuba to Baghdad. Shira is not the most comfortable, nor is it the safest in Akuba, right? Like he's saying. So I think what's going to happen is that horrible guy, Shamsai, that died, is going to basically possess his body, right? Shira rose and joined him. When he sensed she was near him, Ephraim swerved around and grabbed both her arms. Please, Shira, please don't turn me down because of this silly interaction I had. Everything else is fine. It won't happen again. Shira looked in astonishment at Ephraim's hands, which held onto her arms. You're touching me, she said softly. Ephraim slowly released his grip. You really shouldn't, Ephraim. It is forbidden before marriage. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me, really. I mean, I was just upset. That's all. Can't a fellow get upset once in a while? Besides, you're very beautiful. Maybe I did it on impulse. The two remained motionless, staring at one another. Ephraim took her hands into his and drew near to kiss her. We're not permitted, she reminded him. But she did not resist a touch. Let go. Suddenly they heard a voice calling in the distance. It was Ephraim's mother. The woman made her way across the fields from the house to where the couple stood, now separated from one another. As his mother approached, Ephraim became infuriated and ran towards her, bursting with anger. What is it? He shouted as he drew near her. What do you want from me? Can't you leave me alone? The woman stopped in her tracks and eyed her son in puzzlement. What are you talking about? She asked. I just wanted to tell you that the physician from Abadan is here to examine you to make sure those reactions you had after Akuba were not because of any form of diseases you might have contracted there. Why are you so upset? What's come over you lately? Ephraim fell to his knees and then spun suddenly onto his back and squirmed on the ground. His mother ran back towards the house to fetch the Abadan doctor, shouting, He's having convulsions, quick! Shira ran towards Ephraim and then hesitated as she observed his uncontrollable movements. I think he's having, epilepsy. But that's like a symptom of spirit possession, right? That's what it seems to say. Right? Tears streamed from her eyes as she screamed and ran toward Ephraim's house. By the time the doctor arrived, Ephraim had ceased his convulsions and lay limp, his eyes and mouth slightly ajar. Did he do this when he returned from Akuba also? The physician asked. Not at all. No, not at all. He only trembled slightly, as if stricken by some fear of which he was himself unaware. Just a trembling and a chill, perhaps, but nothing like this. Shira drew close to Ephraim's mother and took her hand. Could it perhaps be epilepsy, doctor? I would have assumed so, the physician replied, crouching to where Ephraim lay. But in virtually all cases of epilepsy, the victim recovers shortly thereafter. Your friend here is out cold, and yet, strangely enough, his eyes are open. He felt Ephraim's pulse and tapped at his arms and legs. His pulse beat is very high, but on the other hand, he is very much relaxed. Shira crouched beside Ephraim, opposite the doctor. Ephraim, she whispered. Ephraim, it is Shira. Can you hear me? Speak to me. I care about you. I won't leave you because of this. The doctor will help you. God will cure you. I will pray for you. Do you hear me? Ephraim's eyeballs moved slowly towards Shira, and a terrifying grin spread across his face. Ephraim hears nothing, you beautiful damsel, but I hear you very well. What a sweet voice. He's possessed by Shamsai. Oh. The doctor stood up and stepped back. Shira rose also and walked briskly to Ephraim's mother, as all stood in great shock. His lips didn't move, the doctor exclaimed. Not even a movement of the tongue. I'm afraid to say what I think. Slowly Ephraim got to his feet and brushed himself off. The others stepped farther back, as if prepared to run for their lives. Ephraim continued smiling and then rubbing his eyes. What's wrong? Why is everyone staring at me like that? What happened? Ephraim, are you all right now? His mother asked. Yes, I'm sorry I became angry at you, mother. I don't know what came over me. Don't say that, the doctor said excitedly. I mean, were you at all aware of what just happened? No, I just feel like I woke up. Did I pass out? Shira stepped in quickly and said, Yes, that's what happened. Why don't we all go to the house so Ephraim can have some rest and maybe some tea? The doctor can then examine him. What for? Ephraim protested. I'm okay, really. Just a dizzy spell or something. Ephraim's mother took him firmly by the arm and escorted him toward the house. As they walked, Shira looked up at the tall, bearded doctor and tried to read his face. What do you think is going on? I don't want to say yet, young lady. Have you ever seen anything like it before? Well, there's such a thing as schizophrenia, but somehow this is very different. Very similar to something I witnessed in the home of Rabbi Pitai, right here in Baghdad, not long ago. Tell me. I'm afraid to tell anyone until I'm certain, and I'm not even sure that I am properly qualified to diagnose it, and certainly not to treat it. It would be a good idea for you to coax your friend's mother into bringing the boy to the rabbi. The sooner the better. Can you imagine how scary? And certainly not to treat it. Scary canary. Inside the house, Ephraim's mother prepared some hot tea and muttered some words of supplication. That's what I should do. I should drink hot tea. Hold on. Maybe I'll feel better. If I drink hot tea. Okay, and his mother uttered some words of supplication, a prayer from her heart, that her son would become cured from whatever ailed him. She approached the woman and softly repeated the doctor's words, but the woman refused to listen and shook her head emphatically. No, 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 she said, in somewhat a state of melancholia. Not my son. He's not possessed. Not my son. I am afraid I don't know what it could be, he finally said, frustrated. It's a mysterious phenomenon. It's not epilepsy. It has nothing to do with his nerves, and there is no indication of any form of infection which he might have caught in Akuba. Then what should we do? You saw what happened, doctor. I can leave you with only this advice. Take him to Rabbi Moshe Judah Pitai. With that advice, I leave you. But why? The woman cried. What could the rabbi do that you can't? My dear lady, sometimes illness is in the control of physicians. Other times it is in the control of great spiritual giants. For each illness, God has created a specific cure, and the individual means and circumstances by which that cure can take place. Do not question me further, but do as I advise. As the physician left the house, Ephraim's father arrived, questioning his wife. The frantic woman described in detail what had transpired. What had taken place, her son's unusual behavior, his fit of anger, his strange outbursts, convulsions, speech, and so on. Where is he now? In his room, Nisan. Please don't be angry, the boy is sick. Well, what did the physician say? He came all the way from Abadan because your wise brother recommended him. So tell me what the great doctor from Abadan said. That boy has been in trouble ever since his return from Akuba, as if he had been followed by some demon or something. Nisan, please, watch what you're saying. Nisan walked into the room where Ephraim lay. His wife followed closely behind. Ephraim lay on his bed, grinning. When he saw his father, he shut his eyes and started to laugh. What did the doctor say? You never told me, Nisan said as he approached the bed. He doesn't know what to make of it, the woman replied. I paid for a physician to come from Abadan to tell me he doesn't know what to make of it. Nisan, please. So he's saying, I brought a doctor, and the doctor says he doesn't know what's wrong with him. But the doctor said that he's possessed, right? He's literally possessed. He's possessed. Possessed. Ephraim sat up in his bed and greeted his father. Nisan sat on the bed beside his son and looked him in the eye. His son seemed as normal as he could be, a little pale, but otherwise healthy and happy. You know, son, when I was your age, I went through a stage of revolution. I revolted against everything, even life itself. I refused to eat, to drink, to listen to my parents. I just wanted to spend my life in isolation. in the forests or in my room in bed. I understand that your sickness can't be diagnosed, which means it isn't any illness at all. And if you continue to English us further, I promise you will regret it. I expect you at the dinner table in 5 minutes, fully dressed and washed. I also expect you to bring along with you your Talmud, so that we can learn Torah at the table. No nonsense, son, I warn you. Nisim turned to leave the room when Ephraim picked up a stool near his bed and flung it at his father. Ah! He's getting violent. Oy vey. Oy vey. It's just not good. It's very bad. Very, 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 very bad. See, now I have my chamomilla. I have my chamomilla tea. My chamomilla. Chamomilla. Very, 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 very. Where are we? Okay. The stool smashed against the wall near the doorway, missing his father by a hairline. Nisim swerved around and looked at his son in astonishment. What, may I ask, was that all about? He asked. I don't know, Ephraim answered. I don't know what came over me. Do you realize what you tried to do just now? I'm at a loss for words, father. I don't know what happened. You'll be at a loss for more than just words, young man, Nisim said, pointing a finger at him. I am going to teach you a lesson. Ephraim's mother grabbed her husband's arms and restrained him. Nisim, please, we must go to the rabbi, to Rabbi Pitai. For what? What for? The boy needs a good lashing. Nisim, don't you dare. You know it's forbidden to beat a child at his age. You read it to me from the codes. Right, so there is a law. The law is you're not allowed to beat children once they reach a certain age, because slap them or anything, because they will slap you back. And then you are causing them to do a very bad thing. Because if a child hits his parent, he's chayav misa, which means, according to Jewish law, he's cut off from God, and it's like, really, really bad. So, what will the rabbi do? Give him a gentle rebuke? Nisim, the boy did not intend to do what he did. Well then, what? A demon compelled him, perhaps? Maybe? Let me beat the demon out of him, then. The codes do not discuss any prohibition against beating demons. So funny. So funny! Nisim, stop it. Let us go to the rabbi, please. For your sake, I will do so. But if I had it my way... Nisim put his coat back on and followed Ephraim and his wife from the house. The trio walked through the main sector of the city toward the home of the rabbi, Moshe Judah Pitai, Yehuda. As they walked, Ephraim began to groan. The couple kept leading him by the arm in spite of his groaning, at periods having to drag him as his feet began to buckle beneath him. Suddenly Ephraim broke loose from his parents' grip and started screaming at the top of his lungs. Nisim ran at him in an attempt to recapture him, but Ephraim flung his arms out, hitting his father in the chest. Several people ran to help Nisim with his son and obeyed his instructions to bring the boy back into the house. As the men struggled with the boy, Nisim went on to finish the rabbi. Is it working? Obeyed his instructions to bring the boy back into the house. As the men struggled with the boy, Nisim went on to finish the rabbi. Okay. Lie him on the sofa, the rabbi ordered. Ephraim was stretched out on the sofa as the rabbi approached slowly and took a stool from himself. Sitting beside Ephraim, he peered into his slightly open eyes and then studied his slightly open mouth. Nisim and his wife began to speak before the rabbi, informing him of all that had taken place. Rabbi Pitai listened attentively, although his eyes remained focused on the still form that lay on the sofa. Suddenly the rabbi stood erect and... Come on. The rabbi stood erect and... Suddenly the rabbi stood erect and ordered everyone to leave the room except the boy's parents. Curious to see what was going to happen, the onlookers retreated from the room reluctantly. The sage removed a thick black book from his coat and opened it to a page with a leaf on it. Seating himself beside the boy on the sofa, he began to meditate on the variations of the divine names contained in the text, after which he recited selected psalms. Then, closing the book, he peered into Ephraim's eyes. I command you to speak, Ephraim, the son of Nisim, unless you are someone else. Whoever you are hereby ordered to speak. Ephraim's lips remained still, and his eyes did not so much as blink. His limbs began to tremble slightly, as if engaged in convulsions, and when the trembling eased, a voice from deep within his throat began to speak. So you found me out, the voice said. How was I supposed to know that this would happen? Here I am, back in Baghdad, after years of living as a fugitive. Here I am, faced with a rabbi. Oh, God! Who are you? The rabbi asked, puzzled. Who am I? He asks. I am a wandering soul, sentenced to a life of hell on earth, deprived of a body of my own, driven mercilessly by cruel angels, creations of my own, I might say. State your name and tell me how long you have been wandering about. Questions, the voice said, lamenting. Questions, questions, questions. When I first died, I was asked questions. When I was driven to wander, I was asked questions. Why did you do this? And why did you do that? Must I now answer more questions? Let a wandering soul find some peace and quiet, free of questioning. The boy will be just fine. Don't worry. Go about your tasks. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Chutzpah. The soul inside the body is telling him, the dybbuk, the spirit is telling the rabbi what to do. Chutzpah. What's this business? I asked you a question, I demand an answer, or I will force it out of you. Ephraim's mother broke into sobs and buried her face in her husband's shirt. He remained silent, shocked, speechless. What is your original Hebrew name? The rabbi asked again. Shamsai ben Oved Netzer. My mother's name was Esther, and we were from this very section of Baghdad. I have been wandering 17 years. I command you now to explain to me why you were sentenced to wander. It's a good story. Shamsai began to tell his story, how he had lived a life void of any Jewish knowledge, disinterested as well in any attempt to educate him, and antagonistic towards those who observed Torah. He told the rabbi how he had only worn to fill in the phylacteries, which the men wrap around their arms, right? He had only worn it like 3 times. Is it working? I always have to check if it's working, because sometimes it doesn't work. So, worn it like 3 times. Is it working? Is it working? Is it working? It's working. So, it's working. Okay. I command you now to explain to me why you were sentenced to wander. Shamsai began to tell a story, how he had lived a life void of any Jewish knowledge, disinterested as well in any attempt to educate him, and antagonistic towards those who observed Torah. He told the rabbi how he had only worn tefillin 3 times in his entire life, and likewise did he not wear tzitzit, except for the occasions of his bar mitzvah. His parents, disinterested in Judaism, only had him learn the blessings preceding the reading of the Torah, so that he could be bar mitzvahed. And they only compelled him to pray on Yom Kippur. For some reason, this was important to them, but as far as he was concerned, it was all a big joke, and he had looked forward to the time when he could discard what little practice he had been taught. Shamsai then began to tell of his occupation and of his life as a bachelor. His voice began to stammer somewhat as he told of the rape of Leah, the wife of Joseph. He raped her? I thought she ran away. She was able to get away. His encounter with the stranger in the fields of the Akuba. And finally, so he was fucking everything. And finally, how he had turned to his mule in desperation. So he fucked his mule. This guy is sick. How are you ultimately taken from this world? Rabbi Pitai asked. I was ambushed by some Arab mule dealers. They hacked me to pieces and buried me with no marker so that no one would ever discover me. Later, however, my brother Shaul found my mule wandering near the area. He took it as his own and ran off with my jewels. That miserable brother of mine never bothered to look for my corpse and ran off towards Akuva to live off my money. On top of this, he did not inform anyone of my disappearance, nor did he say Kaddish for me. Do you know what became of your brother? I drove him to his death. I haunted him to his death. I would assume you tried to repent after living such a life. Repent? Me? Shamsai, repent? When should I have repentance? Did you not try to repent before you died? Rabbi, Rabbi, Rabbi. Before I died, I had no intentions other than saving my hide from those gleaming swords. Repentance never would have entered my mind anyhow. Repent for what? And to whom? I believed in nothing, Rabbi, even to the point of death. I used every ounce of my free will in this world to choose not to believe. In God, you mean? In God, in man, in life, in anything. No wonder you were sentenced to wander. 17 years yet. What did you do all these 17 years? Shamsai laughed for what seemed like a long period of time. Listen, I'm ashamed to say this, Rabbi, but the Shamsai escapade was not my first time in the world. I lived in this world some 450 years ago in the same person of Shlomo ben Yechezkel of Safat. Hear that? I was a fellow living in the Holy Land. Me, Shamsai, in the Holy Land? Would you believe that? In Safat yet? Intriguing indeed. What kind of person were you as Shlomo ben Yechezkel? I was an extremely important individual, always endeavoring to do this and to do that on behalf of the Jewish community. Shamsai was a big doer back then, in the person of Shlomo ben Yechezkel, a big doer, a prominent big shot in the Safat community. I gave talks, too, talked like a rooster, stirred the Jewish community to build up the land, attract more Jews to Safat. You should have seen me, a leader. I am surprised you were compelled to come to the world after living such a decent life on behalf of the public. Don't be surprised, Rabbi. I did everything in the world to please everyone in Safat. Everyone, Rabbi, but my own family. I smiled warmly at the public and screamed mercilessly at my wife. I gave generously to the yeshivas and had my wife virtually crawling on her knees for a dinner. Nice guy, right? He's a narcissist. He was a narcissist in the past life. To the community, I was an angel. To my family, I was a monster. What happened to you after Shlomo ben Yechezkel died? The divine tribunal was very lenient with me. One does not know the severity of one's transgressions in this life until one goes upstairs. I say the tribunal was very lenient. I was sentenced for reincarnation. And into what person were you then reincarnated? Shamsai laughed uncontrollably. Person? Ha 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 ha. Ho 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 hoo hoo hoo. My animals are waking up. They're looking at me like when I started laughing like I'm a crazy person. I was not sentenced that leniently. I didn't become a person. I was reincarnated into a pomegranate. And it wasn't easy. It was very uncomfortable. Boy, was it crowded. All those seeds and sticky too. Please, don't bring back the memories. But I was lucky. Ordinarily, as you know, I would have had to wait for a beast to eat me to elevate my reincarnation to the level of beast. And then I would have to wait to be slaughtered and eaten by a person to become graduated to the level of human reincarnation. But fortunately, I skipped all the stages. See, this holy rabbi came around, plucked me, and ate me during the holy Sabbath meal. He made a profound blessing over me and consumed the pomegranate in which I was incarnated, thereby qualifying me for reincarnation as a human being again, and skipping the ordeal of having to be reincarnated in an animal. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? See, like, this is the, like, Kabbalah, I think, explains this, where it talks about reincarnations and stuff. So, for example, I want you to see my animals. I want you to see my animals, how they are, like, they're so cute. If I move it there. Shit. Seriously. Okay, now I'm in trouble because whatever. Never mind. Never mind. Never. Why is there so much water? Why is it all wet? Is my cup leaking? So he was a controller basically when he was in the previous life. He was basically a controller. Like he would make his wife, he would do domestic abuse, you know, like control his wife. You know, walk on her hands and knees, begging for money. I know people like that. It's really sad. Okay, so he says, what was your second visit to Earth like? Well, with my luck, I became reincarnated in the person of a fool. My luck, Rabbi, a real fool this man was, a Turkish fella in Izmir named Shimon. This fella was so naive he would listen to whatever anyone told him. And in Izmir, people have a sense of humor unheard of in Baghdad. His friends took advantage of his naivete and told him that if he wanted to live a long, healthy life, he should eat a lot of animal fat. But Shimon went beyond that and made it his exclusive diet, just animal fat. Morning, afternoon, evening, just fat. He wanted to live long so badly, he killed himself doing it. Eventually, you became Shamsai ben Ovid. Ho, ho, Him you already know too much about. He was the last straw. I should have been better off in hell than to have been returned as Shamsai. Why did you, select from Ephraim ben Nisim as your vehicle for refinement? So why are you possessing Ephraim? How were you allowed to possess him? I almost had him several years ago when he accompanied his father to the fields of Akuba. They stayed over on the Sabbath, and the boy played in the field near where I had committed the homosexual act with the stranger I told you about. Ephraim then removed a twig from one of the trees to play with, a blatant violation of the Sabbath law. In addition to this, he committed the Sabbath violation at the very spot where I committed my violation. Nonetheless, the boy became nearly possessed by me on several occasions. Thereafter, as I struggled to overcome him, failing to do so, I followed him, hovering over him all these days, waiting for the ripe moment to overtake him, for I was informed by my accompanying angels of harm that the boy was susceptible for my becoming refined through him. But I needed to wait for the proper moment. I am not permitted to publicly reveal what the boy did to enable me to enter him. It would be embarrassing for the boy. But now, my dear Rabbi, I plead with you to please help me so that I may ascend in peace and merit refinement in Gehenna. To get clean in hell, right? The dybbuk stopped speaking and allowed Ephraim to sit up on his bed, staring aimlessly at the wall in front of him. Ephraim's mother left the room for a moment and returned with a dish of meat and vegetables, hoping that perhaps her son would be able to eat something. Looking at the meat, Ephraim grimaced and leaned back in his bed. I cannot eat this, the dybbuk spoke from within him. I see the reincarnated soul of an 87-year-old woman dwelling on one of the pieces of meat. I am appalled that you do not see her. Why is her soul wandering about in reincarnation? Rabbi Pitai asked. Because she always used to comb her hair by the front window of her home, hoping some of the men would take notice. She did this throughout her youth, always dressing up attractive for the public eye, while appearing slovenly for her husband. Also in the pomegranate lying in that fruit bowl near the kitchen, a young woman is incarnated. And in that bird outside my window, perched on the branch to the right of the trunk, is a third reincarnated person, but I am surprised that none of you are aware of these things. I suggest you all take a bite of this meat and of the pomegranate and make loud blessings over them, concentrating fully on the holy words of the blessing and responding Amen to each one's blessing, so that the bird will hear it. Thereby you will effect refinement for all these souls, which I have just described, and you will help them attain higher status of reincarnation. Those in the room complied immediately after Rabbi Pitai nodded to them in the affirmative. Everyone recited blessings over the foods, and as each one did so, the other shouted, Amen, loud enough for the bird outside the window to hear. After all had finished eating, Rabbi Pitai sat beside Ephraim and peered into his eyes again. Listen, Shamsai, you know very well that we cannot tolerate your possession of this boy too much longer. I ask you, therefore, whether you wish to leave peacefully or whether you will compel me to use force. Please, Rabbi, do not use force. Don't recite those harsh decrees upon me. I will leave peacefully with your prayers for my soul. No need to summon angelic beings to compel my departure. I will cooperate. However, I cannot leave until 12 and 1/3 hours have passed since my possession first took place. Shamsai, I believe you're starting your evil ways all over again. I am not naive, and I order you out this very moment. Immediately, for today's Friday, and not only the eve of the Sabbath, but also the eve of Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. We have yet much to prepare for the holiday. In fact, it would benefit your soul if you were to depart right now, before the New Year begins. For now is a moment for the elevation of souls to higher planes. Come now, Rabbi. All the Sabbath is a time for elevation of souls. I have all of Sabbath, therefore, to leave, for the entire day is holy. Rabbi Pitai opened his thick black book and began reciting the rites of exorcism, but the dybbuk struggled within the boy, causing him to fall into convulsions again, groaning loudly and grimacing as if in great pain. Please, the dybbuk pleaded, please stop it. I'll leave the boy in 11 hours then. No. Shamsai, now, not in 11 hours from now, right this moment. Wait, recite no more, Rabbi, listen to me. What harm is there in my remaining a little while longer? If I promise to leave the boy before the advent of the Sabbath and Rosh Hashanah, listen, just go and do all your preparations and purchase all your needs for the Sabbath, and then upon your return and completion of all the necessary chores, I will leave, I promise. Agreed, the rabbi said, rising from the bed. However, you must swear to me that you will not harm the boy in any manner until we return. I swear it, by the divine names of the Most High, I swear it. He's swearing it, you know. He's swearing. The rabbi motioned to all that they must leave the room and go about their chores in preparation for the Sabbath. Rabbi Pitai also departed, promising to return shortly before the onset of the Sabbath. Can't you just drive him away now? Nasim asked. I can certainly do so, my friend, but that could be very dangerous. I don't understand, Rabbi. You have been known to exorcise disembodied souls for years now. No one has ever been harmed by it. True, but all dybbuks must be assessed individually. Some are more difficult to exorcise than others, since they have been around longer, and through their many previous lives have developed even evil energies, the strength of steel. Excuse me. So while the meditative rites of exorcism can certainly compel the dybbuk from its victims, even in such cases, harm could befall the victim in the process until there is a gradual, moderate attempt executed in the exorcism. Force in such instances can only be detrimental in the end. Rabbi Pitai left the distraught parents and returned in his white garments, ready for Rosh Hashanah. Several hours later, in his right hand he held a shofar, in his left he held his black book on Kabbalistic rites. Entering Ephraim's room, he placed the book on the small table near the bed and placed the mouthpiece of the shofar between his lips and at the edge of his mouth. With all his might, Rabbi Pitai blew into the shofar, causing a loud, shrill sound to echo throughout the house, blasting Ephraim out of his sleep and provoking the dybbuk to manifest itself. Shamsai screamed in fright as the shofar sounded, causing Ephraim to squirm in convulsions very violently. Rabbi Pitai ceased the blowing and wiped his eyes. Then, taking the book into his hand, he sat beside the boy and peered into his half-shut eyes. It is time, Shamsai. From what part of the boy do you plan to depart? From his eyes. I forbid you to do so, for if you do so, you will possibly cause the boy to become blind. I will then leave through his lips. Forbidden. Absolutely not. You cannot harm him this way, too. Why? I won't break his teeth. I'll leave from between them. No. For you know well that in the process of your departure, the boy will be thrown into convulsions, grinding his teeth, and you will therefore break them in your flight. The answer, therefore, is no. So then tell me then, Rabbi, from where should I depart? From the small toe of his left foot, from between the flesh and the nail. Can't you think of a better spot? That is a place of impurity. It is a repulsive means of exit. This I cannot do. The rabbi opened the black book and began to recite from it in order to throw the dybbuk at his mercy again. "Stop, stop," Shamsai called. "I will stop only if you swear to me that you will leave by the place I have indicated. You will do so immediately and not cause any damage to the boy's toe in so doing, nor will you dare to possess anyone else once you have departed from here. Is that agreed?" "I have little choice, Rabbi, but please hear me out. You are asking me the impossible. How can I possibly leave the body without, in the process, causing some damage to the flesh or to the skin?" Rabbi Pitai realized that he could not afford to become furious with the dybbuk, or he would risk some severe reaction from him, which would further harm the boy's disposition. Taking a deep breath, the rabbi controlled himself and conducted himself with great patience, even though the hour of the Sabbath was drawing near. So the dybbuk was trying to test his patience, to be argumentative, right? "What you say is true," he said in a gentle tone of voice. "It is usually difficult for a dybbuk to leave its victim without leaving behind a scar, or some sort of wound in the process. But I understand that you are of a very high soul, and only because of your transgressions in this world have you been compelled to become reincarnated. Since your soul is so high, its immense energy became overwhelming for you when you became manifested in the world of the physical. Without proper Jewish upbringing, you had no idea how to channel those powerful energies, and so you ended up in trouble all your lives. But this is because of the greatness of your soul. And having such a great soul, my friend, you are one of the rare ones capable of leaving a possession without causing any harm to the victim. After all, you wish only for spiritual refinement. And how can you face the divine tribunal once more after having caused an innocent young boy so much anguish or physical damage?" "A high soul, eh? Yeah, that sounds great. Shamsai the high soul. I probably do come from a very high soul, and no doubt that I am therefore capable of leaving without causing damage. I will control myself as I leave, and be cautious about it. But nonetheless, I must warn you that I cannot control certain side effects in the process of my departure. The boy will become slightly ill for about 15 days, but afterwards will become strong and healthy again. That this is not within my control. I am afraid, Shamsai, that you are incorrect in what you say. There is no necessity for the boy to become ill after your departure. You only wish to remain a little longer and feign a departure, to fake it, by trying to tell me that the boy will become ill after you leave." Right, so he's trying to possess the boy's body and saying that, "Oh, I'll leave, but the boy's body is going to be sick after I leave for 15 days. He really wants to just stay in the boy's body. "He does not have to become ill. I warn you to leave him without any adverse reaction. The festivals are approaching, and the boy needs his full health to perform all the observances of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Simchat Torah. You have the same abilities to prevent his illness when you leave as you do to prevent any damage to his toe. I ask you again, what will you say to the divine tribunal when you face them after having caused this boy to be deprived of all the commandments which surround the upcoming festivals?" "What you say is true, Rabbi, but it will be extremely painful for me to leave the boy without causing some necessary adverse reactions. Extremely painful. It is far better that you tolerate the pains of being cautious than to harm the boy. Do it for the will of God and for the honor of his commandments, and it will do your soul much good." "I will try my utmost to comply, Rabbi. The 10th hour since I took possession of the boy has now arrived, and I am prepared to leave. First, I beg of you to study Torah besides me so that I may depart in the holy words of Torah." Rabbi Pitai motioned to Nissim to bring him a Talmud, which he did immediately, as relatives and friends gathered by the doorway of Ephraim's room to observe. Rabbi Pitai began to study the laws of Rosh Hashanah from the Talmud, and all waited for the dybbuk to depart. Rabbi Pitai read only a brief selection from the Talmud and then requested the book of Psalms and the Zohar to be brought in. He recited Psalm 20, selections from the Zohar, the book of Ezekiel, Shema Yisrael from the book of Deuteronomy, as well as other prayers and selections of Torah study. "I hereby depart. Peace unto you all," the dybbuk said. Immediately Ephraim sat up as if in a daze and opened his eyes fully, looking about him in astonishment as if he he had just awakened from a deep sleep. No part of him was damaged, and he seemed fine and healthy. His mother rushed over to his bedside and embraced him, weeping with joy. Nisim also kissed the boy and held him close. The friends and relatives gathered now in the room, rejoiced with praises to the Almighty, and started to dance with great joy and excitement. "What is going on?" Ephraim asked, bewildered. "Why is everyone crying and laughing and dancing? What happened?" "Nothing happened," his father told him. "You must have fainted or something in the field. Nothing serious. You're all right now. Don't worry. And you know our friends and your uncles and aunts and cousins. They were all concerned about you and came over to visit you. That's all." The rabbi washed his hands and departed with many following behind him on their way to the synagogue. While all were rejoicing about the successful exorcism, Rabbi Pitai seemed downcast as he went. His intuition and Kabbalistic knowledge told him that the dybbuk had not actually left the boy, but had only temporarily allowed the boy to regain his senses in order to fool everyone. But the rabbi knew that if Ephraim was still possessed, for an authentic departure would have thrown the boy into convulsions. Ephraim experienced no such thing, but had sat up suddenly as if in the best of health. The dybbuk's departure was too smooth to have been real. Nevertheless, Rabbi Pitai did not react, hoping the dybbuk would assume that the rabbi too believed that he had departed. With the holidays drawing near, it was better that the dybbuk think he had succeeded in fooling everyone and remained dormant in the boy, not to take over him completely, and at least long enough for the boy to be able to observe the holidays. Why is everyone... Yeah. As Rabbi Pitai had surmised, Shamsai was still around. But he left the boy alone and remained dormant throughout most of the week of atonement that ran from Rosh Hashanah to the following Sabbath, which preceded Yom Kippur. At this point, the dybbuk could not stand his passive life any longer, and manifested himself once more, throwing the boy back into bed with high fever and unusual behavior. Rabbi Pitai was again summoned. "So, Shamsai," he began, sitting beside the limp form of Ephraim again, "I see you are an untrustworthy liar. You thought you fooled me, didn't you? I was only hoping you would lie dormant in the boy till the end of Sukkot, after which I could finally send you off." "No, Rabbi, really, I didn't lie. I really did try to leave the boy on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, but since it was not yet the proper time, as I tried telling you earlier, I was compelled back into the boy." "This is pure idiocy. You are making up your own criteria, Shamsai. I leave you with no choice anymore. Either you leave now, or I will use the book again, but this time without letting up. Wait, Rabbi, please hear me out just this time. Just do this one thing for me, and I will leave right away. Have someone bring 4 roosters to swerve around my head as an atonement, as is customary on the eve of Yom Kippur." "Why 4 roosters? You have only 1 head." "Don't ask so many questions. This is the way I want it. 4 roosters, 1 for each of my reincarnations, and 1 for the boy, Ephraim." Rabbi Pitai motioned to Nisim to fetch 4 roosters, but as the furious father left the room, he turned to the rabbi and said, "How long is this going to go on? How long is that animal going to get his way? Each time it's a different excuse. Today 4 roosters, tomorrow he'll want a red heifer." Do you know about the red heifers? The Muslims are very worried about the red heifer, right? Because there are Jewish people who are getting ready for the coming of the Messiah today. And they have red heifers in Shiloh. And there's a whole spiritual thing about the red heifer, that you need to have it in order to slaughter it and sacrifice it in the holy temple. So they're getting worried that we're preparing for the third temple to come. "Listen, my friend," the rabbi said gently. "I understand your impatience, and believe me, it's not any more enjoyable for me to deal with this soul. But if you want your son in good health, we must cooperate. Get him the roosters." Nisim slammed the door. In a few moments he returned from the yard with 4 roosters in his arms, squawking and pecking at him as he entered the room. By the way, roosters are very dangerous. My friend had 2 roosters. She had 2 roosters in Shiloh. And those roosters would chase me around the room. The roosters would chase me around the room. You know? Like, if I go into the yard, they would start, like, attacking me. Like, you think that chickens are just chicken? No, they're not chicken. They're fighters. They're dangerous. You know? And sometimes, like, most of the time, she would keep the door closed so the roosters can't come in. But then when they would come in, they would go and try to eat the dog food. And then I would have to pick it up and take it out of the house. And every time, it was like a war zone. It was like, if I had to get them in a way where they can't peck at me, because, you know, they have very strong beaks. Okay, so he returned with roosters in his hands, in his arms, squawking and pecking at him as he entered the room. Ephraim sat up suddenly and grabbed one of the roosters, holding it out to the rabbi. Not this one. This one contains a reincarnated soul. Please, Rabbi, you are a master of the proper laws of slaughtering. Slaughter the rooster ritually so that the soul may be refined through your deed. Please. Rabbi Pitai ordered Nisim to fetch another rooster to replace that one he now held. He then motioned to Ephraim's mother to bring him a valid slaughtering knife, with which he then recited the blessing over ritual slaughter of animals for consumption, as commanded by the Torah. He still isn't leaving, Nisim shouted after the 4 roosters were swung around Ephraim's head as a symbol of the sacrificial observances in the time of the temple on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Pitai rose and urged all out of the room, taking Nisim aside and asking him to maintain his composure and not to become impatient. The gathering dispersed and everyone went to synagogue for the Yom Kippur services. Rabbi Pitai instructed Nisim to take his son, possessed or not, to the synagogue on the following day. For Nisim and his wife, the following day was a long, hard fast, compounded by the constant thoughts of their son's possession. The two constantly looked over to the corner of the synagogue, where their son sat motionless, staring into space. They wondered over and over again, when would the dybbuk leave? Now? Perhaps now? In a few minutes? After such and such prayer? Or perhaps such and such? But nothing happened. Finally, the Ne'ilah service, the final Yom Kippur service, began. By this time, the congregation had become oblivious to Ephraim's presence and cried out their hearts to God for forgiveness and for a good life ahead in the year that was to follow. Towards the conclusion of the service, the cantor raised the shofar to his lips and was about to blow when suddenly Ephraim leapt out of his chair and screamed the most frightening scream. The shofar blower removed the shofar as everyone ran over to the boy to see what had happened. Ephraim fell to the floor and shook violently, his lips twisting, his eyes wide open, and eyeballs rolling around in his sockets. As people drew closer to him, he began to shout at them without so much as moving his tongue or lips. "Stay away from me, all of you, or I will reveal publicly all your sins for the previous year. Get out, except for the cantor." The congregants, including Ephraim's parents, retreated to the doorway and waited, peering into the near-empty synagogue. Trembling with fright, the cantor began to walk backward toward the others in an attempt to escape the possessed boy. "No!" the dybbuk shouted, throwing the boy into convulsions a second time. "Remain where you are. I am leaving the boy now. You must blow the shofar, for I wish to ascend the heavens with the pure angels that will emanate from it. Please. Please concentrate with all your might. Concentrate that you blow for the ascent of the soul of Shamsai, the son of Oved." Still trembling, the cantor raised the ram's horn to his lips and shut his eyes tightly in concentration. Taking a deep breath, he blew with all his might, a shrill, smooth sound which pierced the hearts of all who heard it. Ephraim let out a loud, chilling scream which seemed to harmonize with the sound of the shofar, and then kicked his right foot high in the air. He fell to the floor and passed out. The congregants rushed into the sanctuary again. It's really sad. It's very moving. And while some ran to aid the terror-stricken cantor, others rushed to Ephraim's side, attempting to revive him. Ephraim soon came to and was examined by a physician in the congregation, while 2 men were dispatched to summon Rabbi Pitai from his synagogue. The rabbi came at once, draped in his prayer shawl, his face pale, and tear-stained from the long day of fasting and prayer on behalf of his people. And on behalf of Shamsai, the rabbi waited patiently for the physician to complete his examination and then helped Ephraim to his feet, staring into the boy's eyes. Shamsai is gone, Rabbi Pitai said. He then scanned the windows of the synagogue with his eyes and pointed towards one of the windows. All the congregants gathered around the window to examine the small hole that had been left by the dybbuk's departure. The rabbi then motioned to everyone to return to their seats, and when they did, he walked slowly to the ark which housed the Torah scrolls. The congregation rose and remained silent as Rabbi Pitai recited the Kaddish for Shamsai. Wow, and that's the end of Shamsai. He went to the heavens. He returned to the heavens and probably never had to be reincarnated again. That was very moving. The last part was so moving. It's like so sad. You know? Wow, I'm moved. Anyway. So that's the end of Shamsai. Shamsai the dybbuk. That's the end of Shamsai. Shamsai the dybbuk. That was a long story. But it was a good story. It was a moving story. And yeah, it was very moving, this story. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll probably come soon. We'll do a different subject because, you know, we have to take turns learning different things, not just like reading about spirits and devils and demons. So feel free to subscribe or to unsubscribe. Feel free to like or not to like. Feel free to comment or not to comment. Have a great day. Bye.